CFB Paint, we are back. So, Court, Ryan, and you got your host, yours truly, Steve, here for this episode. Off season, we already have closed the spring transfer portal window. So, we're going to talk deep, heavy off season talk. We're going to speculate. We're going to get all into the weeds of surviving the doldrums of the off season. On tap tonight, new coaches. Which ones impress? Which ones disappoint? Who are you expecting to be this year's Lincoln Riley / Sonny Dykes with a surprise excellent season? And who's this year's Mario Cristobal with a worse than expected year one? A couple of other things that we wanted to go through. Favorite mascots. I see that in the show notes, Bri, you noted the different mascots as in like the little like costumed individuals. I was thinking more just like the mascot of the, like
Oh, the
what they are,
nicknames.
like the Timberwolves or the whatevers,
I'm good with nicknames. We can do that.
So nicknames. Yeah, that's probably the right way to
That is the
phrase
term.
that. So
Yeah.
that's my bad. So that's on me. But you could feel free to shout out your favorite. I see you've got some notes on yours, so we can talk about that.
I'll share when we get there.
Excellent. And then finally, yeah, we'll just go with parting shots from there. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to add, but that might be it. Sort of a shorter episode this go around, just a little something to get to you. Hopefully, this is live by about Friday, so you can listen to it and survive the end of your work week, heading into a long weekend, everyone. But let's jump in. New coaches. This is one of those things that I love. I just eat up all the drama around coaching hires. I already have like if Mike Norvell, who again Florida State fan, if Mike Norvell was to be fired, like I am calling candidates A, B, C, and D, right? Like I just kind of keep tabs on certain people and try and keep abreast of what.
What candidates A, B, and C are you calling if Mike Norvell gets fired? I want to hear this now.
Whoa. Okay. Well, number one, I don't think he's getting fired, but I don't think he's getting fired anytime soon. Let's say, for whatever reason he has to step down. Again, I don't want to wish any personal tragedy on him or anyone around him either. But like, if he was no longer the coach at Florida State University, I think my very first call is to Kalen DeBoer at Washington. He's one that I think is going to do well. I question whether or not he's getting all the resources he needs to fully excel there at Washington. So I think we'd be an attractive place for him to get some very elite skill talent in the state of Florida to play in that offense. So he's one that I would certainly reach out to. Put me on the spot here. I'm trying now.
I did, yeah, but you said you had an A, B, and C, so I thought you had it.
It's so far away from Norvell being the case, but I remember when Willie Taggart it looked like things were not going the right way, and Mike Norvell was high on my list. I was curious why he didn't get a job the previous year. I was a little surprised because I think he's done a great job. He did a great job at Memphis. Others that I would potentially reach out to, I would consider Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, potentially. I think that'd be one. Nowadays, you have to kind of consider like, what are you like? Can he bring someone with him, right? Like with the transfer portal. So it's like, who's got a really good position group that they coach or whatever. Alex Atkins, I think, would be a top candidate. Well, the offensive coordinator at Florida State. I think you may have your next head coach already on the staff if Mike Norvell was to, for whatever reason, not be coaching. Again, I suspect he takes a head coaching job at the end of this year. I think I think that's written in the stars just about. Anyway, the punchline is that I am very excited to see where we go with some of these new head coaches. And so my question for the group is, who do you think surprises? Last year, if you remember, Sonny Dykes took over, left SMU and moved hot sides of the rivalry there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to the TCU Horned Frogs and had a Cinderella season for the ages that came crashing down. They turned into a pumpkin, but they did it in the national championship game after having a tremendous run, nearly won a Big 12 championship, did not quite, fell a little short of that. I think about 1.5 yards short of that, if I remember right. And they had a fantastic season. Lincoln Riley, same story. Had a Cinderella year to start his tenure off in Los Angeles at Southern Cal. My question is, who do you think has that in them this year for the new head coaches that just arrived at their respective colleges?
So I'll go ahead and kick us off with maybe the splash. I shouldn't say splashiest hire. That was obviously Deion. But one of the names that's been kicked around for big jobs for a minute now, Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. The rumor was always he was waiting for the Ohio State job to open back up, previously having coached there. But goes to Wisconsin, brings Phil Longo over as offensive coordinator, and they bring in, I think it's Tanner Mordecai, who they brought over to be the quarterback there. Braylon Allen is a very good running back, so he's got that at his disposal, and he's with the offense that we anticipate that they'll play. If it's anything similar to what Longo is doing at North Carolina, Allen might have a lot more room with them using weapons on the outside, and that opens up the run game and can complement each other much better. People can't just sit on, hey, we know who your best player is, we're going to stop that. And I think they've upgraded significantly at quarterback with Mordecai over Graham Mertz, who's now at Florida. You also look at it, and their schedule is decently favorable. They're in the Big Ten West, which is the side of the conference that you want to be in. I believe they have Ohio State this year. I think that's right. And Purdue should be down. Relative last year, Purdue was a big player in that side of the conference. Really, you're looking at Iowa and, maybe if Matt Rhule does something crazy at Nebraska. He's another I expect to have a good first year, but I think Luke Fickell will be my front runner if I'm to choose a Sonny Dykes of the carousel.
I'm saddened to say that we completely 100% agree, and for a lot of the reasons you talked about. I actually am not high on Matt Rhule. I don't think Matt Rhule will have a great year. If you look at his rebuilding, every time he's taken over a program, they go 1 win, 2 wins, whatever. It's not very good to start off, and then he gets rolling. You do have Washington State as a quick kind of early test. With Wisconsin, and then you have Ohio State later on in the year. But you're in the West, you got an easy thing, you can win the West, and then who knows when you get to a Big 12 or a Big 10 championship game, you knock off Michigan, Ohio State, and you're automatically you're in the playoffs potentially. You mentioned Mordecai, the quarterback. They also have the backup quarterback Nick Evers, who transferred from former Oklahoma guy. And I love the Phil Longo hire. I'm excited to see. I like the wide receivers that they have transferring in. They brought a few wide receivers from their Cincinnati team, and then a few other higher quality wide receivers, and then even who they have on their defense and their offense coordinators and stuff like that. Like we have Phil Longo, but then the defensive coordinators all have previous Big Ten experience. Mike Kessel and what's the name? I can't remember it off the top of my head. Let me pull up the list. I had it somewhere. Oh yeah, and Colin Hitchler. I was doing research on him. They all have former experience with it being in the Big Ten. They know how the Big Ten runs. So I'm excited to see how this team does. I think this team can be a 10-win team. And if you look at DraftKings, their over/under for Wisconsin this year is 9. So I mean, you're looking at a potential winning that West easily, and then going against everybody else. I am interested in seeing who else can do well. There are some interesting hires this year. Like we talked about Deion. If I'm going to pick out somebody else besides Luke Fickell, I'm interested in seeing Kenny Dillingham from Arizona State. You guys who've listened to us know we're fans of Kenny Dillingham because he was OC at Florida State. But I think he's got a lot of exposure to good quality coaches. You've got Mike Norvell. You got Dan Lanning. I think I'm huge on Dan Lanning this year. I think Dan Lanning gives USC a run for their money in the Pac-12. Don't want to give any away my picks, but I honestly think watching ASU next year will be interesting because he's trying to attract the talent from Arizona. We all know that there's really good talent out there. They just have to keep it home. And so that would be my next one. I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about my next other thoughts, but go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, the reason I asked this is because I just remember last year, and you can go back and I think listen to some of our preseason talk. Like we are Florida State fans, we all were pretty bullish on what Cristobal could do in year one. Felt like the table was set for him pretty well, and they face planted. And so I'm trying to avoid that same sort of hype. And Wisconsin is one that to me feels like it's boom or bust. Like I don't see a world where they're 7-5. I think they're either 5-7 or they're 9-3. Like it just feels like that. I think you're right. I think they have a lot of good pieces. Phil Longo, for the longest time, I think, everyone says, oh, he's an air raid coach, but then he had two 1,000-yard backs in the same season in Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. That the man can coach to his team's abilities and really can kind of focus in on the personnel that he has and call an offense that's going to highlight that personnel strengths. So I'm excited to see what happens there. Yeah, Braylon Allen tweeting out about love the idea of seeing 5 and 6 man boxes is really exciting to see him bought in already. So that to me is tantalizing. I just know it's a big shift in mentality, and so I wonder if they have the personnel on the offensive line specifically to go up tempo and to be a team that's not trying to pound the rock, 30, 40 times a game. So we'll see. I don't know. That one's one that I'm wary of that one because lots of people are buying into it. And it feels like that is a situation that's set up for him to succeed quickly. That gives me a little bit of pause, and especially what they're doing on the on the offensive line, I wonder if they're going to be able to change up that personnel or get that personnel acclimated to a different system where you're not running the rock and huddling and running the rock and huddling. That part is a little bit of a concern. The bigger concern for me is the lack of Jim Leonard as their defensive coordinator. They've had an excellent defense for the last little bit. I don't anticipate their defense being quite up to that same standard. Just with a change, again, I think that's something that gives me pause there. Jeff Brom is the one that I actually was pretty intrigued with, and it's less because I think he has an ideal situation. It's actually more because Louisville is committed to the NIL game. They're doing great in terms of acquiring talent. We talked about that a little bit on our last episode. But the big thing for me is that he has a quarterback that spent 4 years in a system that will be there at Louisville. So it's Jack Plummer that I'm talking about. He was at Purdue for 4 years, transferred, was the starter at Cal last year, and then used his graduate transfer to Louisville for his final year of eligibility. That plus a apparently paper thin schedule that they're going to face leads me to believe that Jeff Brom might be the one that could potentially be have a surprise season where he's winning 9+ games when others maybe expect him to do well, but maybe not quite to that degree.
Yeah, Brom's certainly one that I have on my list, and for that reason, that you mentioned with Louisville being committed, saying, "Hey, we're gonna go chips in on college football. I'm not gonna be one of these." I mean, you don't want to knock any school, but teams like a Boston College where they're kind of doing what they've always done in terms of talent acquisition, and that's not what's gonna work in the modern game. Quick note on Matt Rhule. I did some real lazy man's research on some of the players who they're bringing in through the portal. And one thing you'll notice is that they heavily lean on players who have been in the Power 5 leagues. They are bringing in 3 players from Georgia. They're bringing in 3 from Florida. A lot of people overall from the SEC. Again, this is lazy man's research, but it's interesting that they're going to established programs or programs like Florida that were hemorrhaging people towards the end there. But I think, I don't know, with what's happened over the past few years, I think it'd be real easy to blow away what should be pretty small expectations at Nebraska. The schedule's pretty soft for them. Out of conference, you have a nice opportunity to beat Colorado, which is good because it might be in front of a national audience against a team that's 1-11 last year and completely done over. So who knows what they're going to be, but where nobody's really anticipating more than 5 wins at the most bullish, I don't think. So I think there's some interest there. The other one that intrigues me, and I don't know if it's quite a year one thing because it's hard to predict somebody doing something big in year one in the SEC West, but Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I think he's created some good immediate hype. I think the way he was able to cobble together a recruiting class is really impressive with the very short schedule they had to work with. And then bringing in some notable recruits, finally got themselves a Jag quarterback. So they took Peyton Thorne from Michigan State, but that tends to be, the type of player that Hugh Freeze says that's just fine. I can work around this. I can coach around it. Again, hard to project in the SEC West somebody having a real breakthrough year.
Can he though? Hold on. Can he coach around it? Because I think he's had a really good run of QBs. Malik Willis got drafted. Look at his quarterbacks at Ole Miss. He had Chad Kelly was his quarterback for I think 2 years. He had Jordan Ta'amu, who is still playing professional football. And yeah, I don't know. I think everyone that's a given. Maybe this is a spoiler alert. He's on my list of who could be this year's Cristobal. But I just I question whether or not he can actually coach around a bad QB. The guy wins. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll do great long term there. I am curious about in year one. I've heard similar things as they've started to stockpile some decent wins in the transfer portal. And I just am curious if they've got enough, both on the offensive line and in that QB room, to actually put together some wins.
No, I mean, it's definitely a question of what Peyton Thorne you're getting as well. 2 years ago, we thought he was a lot better than we thought he was last year. So there is a question of, is this guy a slight plus at the position, or is he what we saw last year? Because Michigan State as a whole was kind of a nightmare. And so how much of that do you place on the quarterback? Well, it's got to be a decent amount, but it can't be everything. And so trying to figure out exactly what you've got there. I think Peyton Thorne is not as bad as we saw last year. I don't think he's a world beater, but I think he's something that can be worked with.
It's interesting, these coaches you guys have mentioned, Hugh Freeze and Jeff Brom, both of those I've had on my list of people that I think will succeed in the future. I don't think they're set up to succeed in year one, if that makes any sense. Jeff Brom's team is pretty much, it feels like Jeff Brom's team is a little bit like Purdue from last year. He brought all his coaches over. It's just it's Purdue just now in the ACC. And he's bringing his old quarterback in. He's bringing in a few other, I think there's a few other transfers that are coming with him. So I'm not sure that they explode year one, but like you said, Louisville's all in on the NIL game, and I expect them to be really, really good in the next year or two. Auburn, okay, really, really good. I mean, I'm 8-9 wins consistently. Auburn, I agree. They need time to flip this roster a little bit. They need to bring in SEC talent that wants to play in the SEC. But Hugh Freeze has shown that he can win in the West before, and I agree, Steve. He's got to go get himself a quarterback, but he's never had a hard time finding a quarterback. So I'm interested to see how he does there. If the Tiger can start to roar there, that West becomes pretty formidable across the board. So,
agreed. A big part of my beef with him is the schedule. Where again, I'll just read it off real quick. UMass at Cal, home against Samford. That's Samford with an N, not Stanford, the Cardinal. Either way, it should be a win. At A&M, home against Georgia, a bye week. At LSU, home against Ole Miss, home against Mississippi State, at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas, home against New Mexico State, or home against Bama. I just hear about 6 or 7 losses in there. That's all.
I see where you're coming from. I just think it takes. I think the wins that are in there are pretty solid wins, and so all you got to do is flip a couple of those losses on a squeaky game. I think it's really possible for them to make a bigger splash.
Well, we revealed my pick for this year's potential Mario Cristobal and one that can disappoint. Corey, go ahead and let us know what your thoughts are as far as a first-year head coach that maybe falls below expectation in year one.
So your pick was Hugh Freeze. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's my.
So pick. My pick is actually your pick. I think Jeff Brom falls below expectations. Yeah, I'm interested to see how he handles things. To be honest, I think the way he's brought in and how excited about people are about him, it almost doesn't set him up for success no matter what. If he wins 8 or 9 wins, great. That's kind of what we expected of you. The schedule could potentially be soft depending how these teams kind of fall out. NC State, Duke, if Duke can be the same Duke as they were, and then Vodtech and Virginia, if those teams can come back at all, or it could be really, really easy. But I don't think he's set up minus the NIL game. He's just the expectations are not going to be in your favor. You're expected to come in. You're kind of this hometown hero. I do think they'll give him time, but I don't think it's going to be like. I don't think they're going to fire him in the first years. Sorry, in the first season, but I do think they're going to be like, all right, well, when does this kick in? When does this work? Because he was never more than a 9-win coach in Purdue, and a great, and Purdue didn't have the NIL that Louisville's going to have. They didn't have the talent that Louisville's going to have, but I don't think he's a world beater coach either. So I think this year is going to be. I'm guessing 7 wins. That's what I'm putting him at.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, DraftKings puts him at. Let me see. Currently, they say 8, but I'm putting him 7, closer to 6 than 8.
Yeah, definitely. That's a place where there's a lot of hype built up, and so that gives the opportunity for a fall. Similar to Miami last year, where everybody's going, they're probably going to win the Coastal. They might not knock off Clemson, but like making it to an ACC championship is like a far cry from where they were the year before with Manny Diaz. And Louisville is kind of in that conversation where it's like behind Clemson, Florida State. Them and North Carolina seem to be the ones who might have themselves well positioned.
Yeah, I do have a second one, and it's Trent Dilfer at UAB. I mean, I think that was just a terrible coaching hire. I mean, his experiences in the NFL and then at high school level. Granted, he won the state title at high school level, but I mean, I've never been overly impressed with his analysis. UAB doesn't expect the world of him, but come on, like this is one of those flyers. This is going to be Tom Herman in 3 years.
Be sure to clip that.
I had Dilfer on my list too. I thought this, it's one thing going from the high school game to college, but now it's a whole different thing because college is paid. And it's not paid by the school, but that's a different element that you have to get used to. And I think sometime as a coordinator, getting used to that sort of thing would go a really long way. So we'll see what happens. It's a splash hire, but I think a poor one and a presumptuous one. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Deion. Again, expectations not sky high in Boulder. 4 wins. I think everyone would say that's a decent improvement on last year's 1-11 season. But I can also very easily see a year where they, I would say less than 4 would be pretty disappointing. If you did all this stuff over the offseason just to go 3-9, that's a little frustrating. I can see players getting upset with it. You can also see a world where Shedeur Sanders gets hurt. And guess what? He made very public that was his quarterback, and they do not have a useful backup at that position, nor do they have the protection I think that he'll require. So I do think if he being Deion can turn over the reins to his assistant coaches, to his coordinators for play calling, I think he's made good hires there. But I can also see by the end of the season a bunch of players saying, hey, I was sick of some of the antics and things that went on. I hated the cameras. You could have a totally divided locker room because that's what happens when you have 2 wins and you're 10 games into the season. I think that one could be, and a disaster is not even the right word because Colorado will make money and Deion will stay on for another year. But I think there might have been just a wild winter, wild spring, wild summer, all for naught in Colorado.
I wonder if those cameras get the same access if things start to go south.
No, I mean that's a fair point.
That out there.
They may not, but I think some Instagram lives might become a lot more popular after those things start to go south. Players speaking out
for sure.
And things going down. Because we've already heard from some of the players who have transferred out after the spring, some of who transferred in during the winter. If you combine that with poor results, it just makes it a very unattractive situation.
I'm just saying that every football documentary I've ever watched, Last Chance U, a season with the Florida State Seminoles, like when things turn south, that access gets shut off real quick. Now the interesting thing is like, what do you do if that's the lifeblood of your program? Is all of the hype and social media that is part of it? It'll be interesting. I don't think they'll necessarily implode. I do think they're reasonable expectations is somewhere between 2 and 4 wins, but they're such a mystery. Like I think they could overachieve that just because we're really not sure who they are or what they are because there's so much new. It's really hard to say.
That's my thought process. Is like, I mean, you have 70% of the roster is brand new. Like, this is not the same team. This team cannot have the same expectations. Granted, these are players. A lot of them, some of them weren't starters on their own team. Some of them were contributors, though. I honestly think I think you have a 3-4 win season here, but then I think Deion gets the talent to get them to a 7 or 8 win season, 7 or 8 win team in the next 2 or 3 seasons. I don't know if I believe Deion has the coaching prowess to get them above that. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll see.
The other factor to look at with Colorado is their schedule does them no favors in year one for Deion. They don't have layups for their out of conference schedule. They're playing TCU, they're playing Nebraska. They do get Colorado State. But also the Pac-12 is just a really deep conference in terms of how many good teams you have to play. And so there's a lot, like a 4-win or even a 3-win season, like that should be about expectation. But for a lot of these players,
DraftKings, that is expectation.
There you go. But for some of these players who are coming from other I should say the more high profile players that Deion was able to bring, probably not used to winning 9 games in a season. And so that wears on you in a different way, where you got to have the mentality to continue to go out there and go hard every single time, so that way you give yourself an opportunity against the Arizonas of the world.
Definitely. No, it's I think like we said that's one just that will be intriguing to follow, both because Prime is obviously a media darling, but also his approach has been so unique and so I guess emblematic of what college football has become in the last 3 or 4 years. So it'll be exciting to see. Does it resonate? Does it have early returns that are positive? Are they kind of on par with expectation? Do they fall below? I feel like the spectrum there is just very, very diverse in terms of what's possible there at Colorado in year one.
And quickly, I'll just add.
Other,
yeah. I mean, this is still on the Colorado situation, but when Corey, you talked about Kenny Dillingham at ASU before. If there wasn't a Deion Sanders this year, we'd be talking about Arizona State and how wild their transformation through the portal has been over this offseason. Because it is unprecedented to like an unbelievable level. Colorado just happens to be the same year. And so now, that's the second craziest one, but this one's way crazier.
Yeah, and it's weird because it feels like Colorado's like kicked players off, and it doesn't feel like Arizona State did that. Like,
no,
it
has
like
a totally different vibe.
Players want to come, yeah. So,
and I think part of that is that most of the Arizona State players left before there was, before it happened, before a coaching change actually occurred. Plenty of them announced their intentions to enter the portal during the season. It felt like things were turning south on Herm Edwards there, and so I think part of it was that they already kind of knew what was up, and Colorado was maybe a little bit different in that. I don't know. I didn't follow all of the fallout at Colorado last season, but it was pretty public with the Arizona State stuff, with some of the allegations around transgressions with regard to NCAA rules. But that's neither here nor there. Be excited to see it. I am more anxious for this year of football than I think I've been in some time. And I think part of that is I'm a Florida State fan, where there's an opportunity for them to have a pretty special year. But man, I am really excited to see how all of this shakes out, particularly with the new faces and familiar faces sometimes now in new places. Shifting gears now, we're going to talk about favorite nicknames. But before we do, like I indicated before, I did put down favorite mascots, and Brian has some notes. So Brian, walk us through them all. If we have a comment or an edit, we'll jump in.
Yeah, I'll go quickly through these. First off, and this is obviously some favoritism toward my alma mater, but Cosmo the Cougar, whoever they're getting to be Cosmo, is always a really good dancer and a really good athlete. There's a lot of things that guy can do. He pops up with the dance team, he pops up with the cheerleaders, and he's not just there, as I'm gonna clap and raise my arms. He's gonna do backflips. He's gonna do stunts. I think he's as good as they come in the college game. I love the Oregon Duck. I don't think he has a name other than the Oregon Duck. I think he's the funniest.
Puddles.
I think
Puddles.
Puddles. There we go.
I'm pretty sure it's Puddles.
I'll lean on that. Puddles, I think, wins for the funniest. Every time I see the Oregon Duck on TV, on camera, I've never seen the Oregon Duck in person, I should say, doing something very funny. Always makes me smile, always makes me laugh and go, that's why we have mascots. Because most of the time it's like, why is that person here? And they're just dying in the heat and that poor uniform and having a hard time. I think the Oregon Duck's hilarious. I'm not afraid to start ruckuses with the other mascots as well. I appreciate that in a major way. And then I'll go Bucky the Badger. This is pure aesthetic. I think Bucky looks good. The head looks good. The outfit with the stripes, I think it's just really clean. So Bucky the Badger, place in my heart. And then two that I want to throw on my least favorite mascots. I don't know the Buckeye's name, but for the same reasons I like Bucky the Badger, I don't like the Buckeye. It just looks terrible. Like, maybe that's one you didn't need, go the Alabama route at that point. Just like pick a different name and do something completely different. It's like, yeah, we might be the Crimson Tide, but we're not going to do a wave. We're going to do an elephant because it's a normal thing. Ohio State
for Christmas tree.
Yeah, sure. The Christmas tree works great. Just maybe don't stick with Buckeye if that's your mascot. Do something else for the actual costume. And then this last one, again, showing my bias, but Sebastian the Ibis. I don't know if y'all have seen an ibis before, but they don't have bills like that. And it bothers me every time because I'm a Floridian and I've been out on the river and I know what a white ibis looks like. And it's got this long hooked beak that comes together. And Sebastian the Ibis has a duck bill. And that bothers me every time. I can't get over it. I'm not going to get over it. They even have images of Sebastian the Ibis that'll be like on shirts and jackets. And those have it correct. But for some reason, they can't update this mascot. I don't know how you do it well. I think it still might look odd, but like, if you can't do it well, just don't do it.
Okay, so I actually made my own list because I was along the same lines as you, and I have Sebastian actually as one of my favorites because I know he doesn't look like an Irish, but he goes so hard. It's so fun to watch. Like he's way more intense than he should be for any type of bird. So I love him. I'm as far as looks go, I'm Ramsey's, like the North Carolina Ram. I love that look. I think that looks so cool. If you're going crazy and fun, I got to go with you, Ryan, on Cosmo the Cougar. And then if we're going like animal, I mean, who doesn't like bring like a wild buffalo onto the field? So I mean, you can't be upset with Colorado on that one. Although Bevo tends to have a little bit more animosity towards other dogs or other mascots than the buffalo. I don't know. That's what my list was.
Okay, I'll have a couple comments on some of what we've just discussed. Sebastian the Ibis doesn't quite have a duck bill. It is pointed, but it's not that thin, tiny little
it's not. Yeah,
beak that an ibis has. You're right. My biggest beef with Sebastian is like how he pulls it across.
I love it.
I love it all the top time. Bill and bottom bill and pulls them on separate. Why is that a
What's
thing?
Up?
Why do they do that? Like, why would you do that? Like, it just to me is more confusing than it is cool. So
Disagree.
Never understood that. Never got that. Agree. Cosmo is pretty cool. He actually at sometime during I think the third quarter does like a stunt every game and does like some of them have actually been like super impressive. Like one of them was he was doing like push up like
he's going up the tables.
Where they stacked 3 tables on top of each other and he'd do a push up and jump up to the next level. Really impressive. So hats off to those people. I feel like I also should tell our audience that I was the high school mascot for the Lawton Childs High School Timberwolves my junior year. I was Timmy the Timberwolf, and it was a nightmare. It's hot. It's hard to move around in that big old clunky costume. The head is super heavy. So no disrespect to anyone that puts on the mascot costume. That's quite the feat. But there are some that I think are more fun than others. The one I was surprised we missed out on or didn't use, Harry Dog, the UGA mascot. I always have loved that mascot. Back in the NCAA football video games where you could do the mascot games, I was always Harry Dog. He's flying around there making plays. It looks like every one of them is a linebacker that can run like a safety or run like a corner.
That's funny. One other reason why I like Sebastian, when I was in like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, one of my classmates, his dad used to be the mascot for the Hurricanes. So
no kidding.
Yeah, he had brought in pictures of that too. So it was kind of cool.
That's cool. All right. Now let's shift gears to favorite nicknames. Here's where I have a lot more opinions and a little bit more research. I don't know about y'all. I'm going to stand on my soapbox for just a minute. I love unique ones. There's oodles of Bulldogs, there's oodles of Eagles, and we got some trivia questions coming out on the YouTube channel later to kind of point out some of those common ones. But I love unique ones, and it's kind of a shame. I saw that the college football, the Sickos committee, tweeted out one of the ones that I think is really kind of cool. Is like the Indiana State Sycamores. Like I remember at one point they made the NCAA tournament in basketball, and I was like, "Oh, Sycamores! You don't hear that often." Like, I like things that are unique. So the ones that I have as far as like some of my favorite nicknames, and we'll limit this just to FBS teams. Um, but for me, like the UMass Minutemen, I love when you incorporate something that is local and kind of unique about your region too. So gonna kind of give a nice hat tip to UMass. I know that they're not a great football program. They have an excellent nickname, the Minutemen. I love that one. I think that one's really cool. I can keep going, or maybe we can do a little round robin.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. You mentioned having seen a team in the NCAA tournament. So when you said nicknames at the top of this podcast, obviously I hadn't prepared, but like the first thought was like, oh, I love the Salukis, Southern Illinois Salukis.
Love it.
Because I also like kind of those more unique names. But I'm going to go with a team that we've touched on just a little bit today in reference from last season, and that's the TCU Horned Frogs. Unique, they're their own thing. They're really cool. The logo ends up really cool. The mascot we didn't even mention, but ends up looking really really sleek as well. I think that's a really cool one. It's very, I don't know, very much adds to the own brand. There's sometimes where I think, like you said, like Bulldogs or Tigers doesn't really add that much to the brand. I don't think of the Clemson Tigers. I just think of Clemson. But TCU, I always think the Horned Frogs every time I'm thinking about them. And I think that is the symbol of a good nickname. So I'll throw that one in there.
I like ones that are like kind of super fierce and stuff like that. So I like the Spartans of Michigan State. Like I don't think they lean into that enough, to be honest. But I think it's a cool nickname. Also, like the Paladins of Furman. Like who wouldn't want to be a freaking knight, dude? Like, but you aren't a knight. Although UCF's knight mascot is freaking awesome. I would rather be a paladin than a knight, but I think they're cool.
Paladins. That just takes me back to like the Warcraft 2 days. Anyway, no.
Played that last week.
Oh, excellent. I should get back. Old school video games are the best. No, I think we kind of are hitting on some of the things. Michigan State, you think when 300 came out that they would just totally revamp everything, do it all in that same script, and I've never attended a game at Michigan State at Spartan Stadium, but I would imagine if they don't have like the little sound clip of Gerard Butler shouting "This is Sparta" right as they walk out, that needs to change right now.
I just hope they lean into it super hard when the Trojans of USC join the Big Ten and it's a Trojans versus Spartans game. Just like that should be an absolute spectacle for that reason.
Definitely. I'm all for it. A couple others that I like. Well, maybe I'll go. I don't know if anyone else has more, so I don't want to. Okay, perfect. So I love the Wisconsin Badgers. I know we dunked on the mascot a little bit. It's so funny looking. I just.
Oh no, I like Bucky the Badger. That was one of the ones I'm into.
I know, but he does look. You admitted that he looked funny, right?
No, I like his suit. I think he looks good. I like the pin or the stripes.
I'm talking about the helmet.
The head.
I'm talking about.
I love it all. I'll
trying to twist your words. Like you do not like
it. Sorry.
I'll use my Jedi mind tricks on you, Brian.
Bucky, I've got your back every time.
All right. Well, I love like the logo that they have with him, with his chest puffed out, and Badgers are just like, they're terrifying. I know they're small, but they are like, if I came across a Badger in the wild, I would freak out. Like I'd be like, oh my gosh, we need to get out of here right now. So I love the Badgers. I think that one's fun and different, and that's the thing that always stands out to me is like, be something that is uniquely you. And they really lean into Bucky Badger, which again, the mascot, the nickname, and even the logo for Wisconsin, I'm all for it.
All right. If you want to go unique, you gotta go University of California, Santa Cruz, banana slugs. Come on, guys. Like, if you haven't had a chance to go look it up, go look it up. It's just fun. Like, that is unique. And who goes, I'm going to be a banana slug?
I just imagine
Hang
recruits
on.
tweeting it out.
Slugs for life.
Oh, wow. Even the mascot looks pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know if I would be able to identify it as a slug, but it's
No,
still
it
cool.
looks like an alien. Like,
Yes, exactly.
we'll tweet it out so that those that aren't able to Google it themselves, you can see it there, or feel free to Google it, whatever's easier for you that are listening or watching here. Yeah, Bri, did you have another? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and this is a mascot I didn't like, but a nickname that I do, and that's the Hurricanes. Miami Hurricanes. I don't know any other Hurricanes in the FBS at least. Um, as a Floridian growing up, very much a prevalent threat, something that comes by every year hurricane season, and you cross your fingers that there's not too much destruction, and cross your fingers that you'll get to miss a couple days of school. Like that's kind of the deal that comes with hurricane season. Um, I've always thought that was a cool nickname, and you know, I yeah, I just think it really well, like, you know, the even the Canes abbreviation works super well. I just think that's one that fits the region, fits the school, fits the identity, um, and kind of has again building on the brand of the U. Hurricane's a great nickname.
I really like the fact that they can use that hurricane siren and stuff like that. And so many other schools have adopted that now for like the third down thing. Like, but I love it. I think it's super, super cool. And how can you also not think about Florida State, with the Seminoles? Like, if you know anything about the wars with the Seminoles and the three battles where they were unconquered and where Chief Osceola is buried over in, like, what is it, like Charleston, South Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
Go look at the history of that school and just see the camaraderie that they have with the tribe. I mean, that's super dope.
Yeah, they have an annual festival that wasn't super long ago, so I guess a handful of months ago at this point. I think it was in February. But a lot of the tribe leaders took Mike Norvell, and it's really awesome. There's gator wrestling stuff. There's like all sorts of crazy traditions that you kind of get a greater insight in there, and sort of the relationship that's been built between the school and the tribe. I think initially the school just kind of took the name, but what's grown out of that has been something that's really cool, and that's been something that I think it's nice that they feel honored by it. In this age where there are times where things might get misrepresented in poor ways and inappropriate ways. That's one where two organizations have come together and made something really cool.
And even like the fact that they use like their Seminole tribe symbols on the uniforms, I've always liked that. Even like that's a newer thing within the last 4 or 5 years, but I think that's super, super cool.
Yeah, I think basically the entire state of Florida scores good marks here because I think the Gators also it's a very Florida thing. So I think that all three of the major schools there all have unique mascots that also kind of have very good ties to the state and either the state's history, its climate, its wildlife. So that's really cool. I was going to shift gears and go to Coastal Carolina with the Chanticleers. That number one. So I don't know if you guys know some of the history here. So Coastal Carolina University was at one point. I'm going to get this wrong. So this is how I was told the story. I'm not looking at it right now, and I wasn't prepared to tell this, but like at one point was a satellite campus for the University of South Carolina, the Gamecocks, and so they were like, well, we want to have that similar branding, but how do we make it kind of unique to this satellite campus in Conway, and they came up with the Chanticleers, and boy, is that like logo of the like teal and I don't even know what other color you call that. That's some sort of like bronze almost looking color of that angry rooster is absolutely awesome. And so like their whole thing, like their colors too. I know it's not part of the question, but like the name, the the imagery, all of it very strong. I'm a big Chanticleers fan.
I'll go ahead and name another one. We've given the Big Ten some love, but we haven't given any yet to Michigan with the Wolverines. Corey mentioned like having a buffalo run across the field. I do like. Not only is this like a unique animal name because it's still an animal, but it's like also it's a North American animal. Um, so it feels more like germane to the school, to the region, but also there's no other Wolverine, and so for whatever reason it sounds super cool. Steven talked about how fierce badgers are, even at their small stature. Wolverine kind of has the same reputation of just being absolutely vicious. It might not be that big, but it's bad news if you run into one. Um, the one thing that they're missing is any like that I've seen cool depiction of a Wolverine. They lean a little bit away with that the M with the logo and then the helmets. The helmets are cool. Don't get me wrong, but they don't have anything that depicts Wolverine in an awesome light. But the name itself, I think, is a win. So I'll go ahead and throw them in.
That's why I didn't include them actually, is because they don't lean into the Wolverine enough for me.
Not
I
enough.
love I love the winged helmets. Don't get me wrong, but like it's there's like hardly an image of it. There is one, but it looks frankly a little goofy. If you ask me my opinion, I don't know if you've seen that Michigan Wolverines. I think they even have it on some of the stickers on the back of their helmets, and it doesn't do it for me.
Can I? So I'm not going to be mean to our listeners, but I really don't like the Sooners as a mascot. But I do like the fact that they lean into it and like they embrace it fully. Like I think it's like okay, a bunch of people that showed up early to Oklahoma are called Sooners. Great, and that fits right along the lines of what you want. But like people riding in wagons is not what I want my mascot to be. But I do love that they roll into it sometimes literally, and so it's kind of fun.
That one to me I like. It's unique. It has to do with the state's history. That one I'm fine with. I think the Sooners is fine. It's just I remember I vividly actually having the conversation of what a Sooner was. I was at my best friend. I'll name drop him here. He probably wouldn't appreciate this, but whatever. I was at Patrick Smith's house, and we were just playing. And his dad had Nebraska Oklahoma on, this is year two of Bob Stoops where they upset number one Nebraska and they end up winning the national championship that year. But like we were in there and his dad was freaking out because it's just like, oh my gosh, they're going to beat Nebraska. We were right toward the end of the game and he's like, oh, it's the Sooners. And I was like, what on earth is a Sooner? And like he kind of like described it a little bit, but like it was still like I didn't really it didn't really set in. But I was like, okay, they're the Sooners. Okay, great. Like like
Yeah,
I just
I just
remember
love it
that.
when like teams, even if I don't love their mascot, they go full in. Like even the Cornhuskers, like that's a random mascot, but the Nebraska goes full in on it, and I love the embracing of it. Or it's like when going out of this, the Packers, the Cheeseheads and stuff like that. That's fun.
I'm going to throw in kind of a different one that I don't like the mascot for, but I like uh, the nickname for, and that's the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. So there was one point where my wife, any game we'd watch, she'd say, "Why is that team called that?" And we'd start looking up why these nicknames were invented. Demon Deacons was one of these ones. Florida State was playing Wake Forest, and I was like, I have no idea. And it turns out they were playing what is now the Duke Blue Devils. I think it was the Trinity Blue Devils at the time. And they whooped them, and it was a news article. That's one thing I found. It's a lot of like people who write newspapers were the ones who were making up these nicknames. That's how Crimson Tide came. And that's how the Elephant emerged as well. Um, but they were talking about the devilish. I don't remember if it was like an offensive line or defensive line of Wake Forest, and then eventually nicknamed them the Demon Deacons in the article, and it just kind of stuck from there. They said, "Yeah, that's a great description for who we are, and we're taking that and we're branding ourselves." So I think that's a cool one.
We could probably talk about these for days. I might I might go ahead and I don't know if anyone else had a special one they wanted to call out. Otherwise, we might just leave it there. We can talk through a few others on subsequent episodes if we want to. For those hardcore listeners that are curious about every single mascot we could unearth, but no, that's the thing. I love when it's unique, when it's something that differentiates your university with everyone else and kind of identifies both with maybe something local or something um, associated with the state or with the area that the places that the school's located at. So that's always fun. It's always easier for me to root for mascots that I have, or root for teams that have nicknames, I should say, that are that are exciting, that are fun, that are different. So figured we would share out some of our favorites. Thanks for tuning into that. As far as parting shots go, I don't know if I've got anything real amazing to share out, or I don't have a whole lot of pot shots that I'm ready to fire at a bunch of schools that want to catch strays here. So I don't know if anyone else has got something.
I'll just put in one quick. Kevin Warren, for those of our listeners who don't know who that is, Kevin Warren is the former commissioner of the Big Ten who got out of there. He basically came in, said, cool, we're getting USC and UCLA to come in here. We're going to get a big new media deal, and I'm out. The media deal that was announced and everybody thought was done is this monstrosity of a deal. Isn't done. He left it, and there's signatures that aren't on there. It was not what it was purported to be in its entirety, and so now the Big Ten they're not scrambling, but they're working to figure out what the media deal is going to be and what sort of negotiation needs to continue on for that to happen. Kind of a gross move from Mr. Warren. So that's one where I'm glad that kind of came to light, where it's just like, oh, you can't just take credit for something that you didn't get done because you think it's a possibility or that's the best version of what you were asking for in the negotiation. So just a quick shot there for a conference commissioner. Maybe just like wrap up the things that you said you wrapped up before leaving.
I don't know. I've left a couple of jobs, and I've always been like, all I have to do is keep things held together until that date that I put in my 2 weeks for, and then you leave, and it's not your problem.
Yeah,
And
but you don't tell them, hey, I've done everything, and then let them figure out, oh no, that's not the case.
How it's presented is that's neither here nor there, and we're not going to get into what I have done and what I haven't done. But I'm just saying, like, every time I've left a job, I sure have left some unfinished business, and have also said to that person who's maybe backfilling my role, like, hey, feel free to blame it on me, whatever. Like, because when I get in a new job, I do that same thing. Yeah,
no, dude, I got a job, and I had done a tax return. A large tax return for a company, and my boss came back. I put in my week because I only need a week to go on this one. I put in a week, and he says, "Hey, can you make some changes?" I go, "This has been sitting on your desk for a month." No, I'm not making any changes. You can deal with that.
I appreciate
going out on his own terms. That's what I say.
I think you two are doing it honestly, where you tell them, hey, there are things left to be done. Feel free to blame me. Not I'm the hero. Everything's fixed because of me. I've secured the future. And then it's not. It's not the case.
It's essentially secured, just not fully secured.
There's some I's to dot, some T's to cross, whatever.
Now, and all the other letters to put down.
Is not secured. We'll see what happens with the Pac-12. And the ACC.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Apple TV deal's not coming through, huh?
No, they have to go find
maybe,
what is it?
Maybe
what
they go
do they broadcast soccer on nowadays in the
Yahoo
States?
Screen.
Yahoo's get that sixth season in there.
We signed a deal with Paramount Plus.
We're going to be on Freebie this year.
Well, that will wrap things up for another episode of the CFB Paint podcast. We appreciate you listening. Again, feel free to subscribe, listen to the podcast, share it with your friends. We love additional 5-star reviews, and also we're doing more and more on our socials. So again, on Twitter, that's at CFBPaint_, youtube.com/CFBPaint, Instagram, it's CFB Paint is the handle.